Yeah, so HearX is a social enterprise. We started in 2015 towards the end of the year. You know, our big vision is really to see healthy hearing for everyone, everywhere. Hearing loss is one of the largest global epidemics. It's a leading contributor to the global burden of disease. And the reality is that the vast majority of people globally have no access to hearing healthcare services. The World Health Organization estimates indicate that there's close to 500 million people globally who have permanent disabling hearing loss. And less than 3% of those people actually are able to benefit from a hearing aid because they just don't have any access. So you know, being at the southern tip of Africa, we kind of feel that pain very acutely. And my background is in audiology and hearing healthcare research. And it was around 2013 at the University of Pretoria, you know, we were using e-health and telemedicine methods that we really felt, myself and my co-founder, Herman Mayberg from computer engineering, we felt that this whole trend around technology and connectivity has kind of revolutionized the world for consumers should also benefit healthcare globally, and specifically in our case, hearing healthcare. And that's when we thought that we really need to leverage these trends and use mobile phones, mobile technology to bring hearing healthcare to people. So that's kind of where the dream started. From there, we obviously had a long journey of doing research, developing MVPs to actually use a smartphone application to test for hearing loss accurately. So we spent 2-3 years doing research in a university setting, finally got that right. Submitted a patent and some trademarks through the university. And then had a long journey to kind of get HearX out into a commercial entity to function as a social enterprise. You know, universities are notorious for making it difficult to get IP actually, you know, to impact people's lives. And at that stage, you know, we were fortunate to get this initial technology out on an agreement and partnership with the university into a social enterprise that really started in 2016. Beginning of the year with 2 employees, our CEO who joined and also became one of the later founders, and our initial developer. And that's kind of, you know, where HearX got birthed. We're now at the place where we have a large portfolio of products, you know, more than 11 products for consumers, but also for clinicians, healthcare clinicians. We are a medically device certified company, ISO certified also. And we deliver solutions to more than 38 countries around the world. And we've touched the lives of over 700,000 people to date with hearing tests and diagnostics. And we've also partnered to include vision tests into our solution with partner solutions from the UK, amongst others. And then, of course, you know, people always ask us about how do we see, you know, this kind of loop being closed. We develop technology that can help people identify whether they have a hearing problem, what kind of hearing problem this is, and we can connect them to assistance. But we are not a hearing aid provider. So that's something we've ventured into over the last 6 months. So we're now in the final stages of actually, you know, finalizing a solution where we'll be able to offer the full range of services from a mobile device, both the screening, the detection, diagnosis, and then the actual fitting of a hearing aid directly from our platform, so that we can truly, you know, close the loop on providing hearing healthcare for everyone everywhere. The philosophy around our technologies has always been that we want to have technologies that are so easy and simple to use that people with minimal training, lay people, should be able to operate them. So that's been a clear differentiator in the way we've done this. We've also been very strong on the fact that we want to make sure that you know, our digital solutions can be utilized on the front lines, so at grassroots level. You know, whether you have connectivity or not, it should work. And our philosophy there has also required us to do lots of field testing. So we've been working closely with partners on the ground in low and middle income countries to really test our technology. And that feedback has been important for us to iteratively develop and adapt and change our technologies. And part of that has been for us to build strong networks around the world of like-minded companies and groups that are focused on delivering services to underserved populations. And with that in mind, we've been fortunate to also have good collaborations with groups like the World Health Organization, with UNICEF and others who have also been able to utilize our technology. So a lot of growth, but we're only, in the early stages. We still feel, we really started in 2016. We're now beginning of 2020, but we still realize that we're only scratching the surface. But we look forward to the next year, 2-3 years, to really see this vision reach exponentially larger numbers of people than we have to date. So that's a little bit of a quick kind of brushstroke overview of HearX. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
That's perfect, thank you. So the first couple of questions we have are more on the technical side, and I'll let Arman start with his question first, and then I'll also ask a question on sort of the technical side of the solution you provide.
Yeah. Thanks for the introduction. Quick question regarding the application. What kind of headphones do you need? I mean, we saw the big headphones in the videos that people use to go through the hearing test on the application. Can they use other types of headphones, or is there only specific type of they can use?
So that's a good question. So, we have two ranges of products. The one is clinical, a medical range of products, and there we have to adhere to medical grade standards. So our products there have to have CE and FDA approval. And for that solution, we use headphones that are standardized, that have calibration values that we can utilize, and we actually have to calibrate those headsets. We then connect them to a mobile phone. We also support a limited number of mobile phones because we have to standardize on them. But once they're connected, the calibrated headphone with the mobile phone, we actually link the calibration values to that specific device, and then you have an active device in the field. We also have options where we can, hot swap headphones. So every year you need to recalibrate to adhere to the standards. So we can actually swap a headphone around in the field without someone having to have downtime on their devices, which is a totally new kind of way to ensure continuity in service delivery. We also have, as I mentioned, consumer sides to the products, where we actually have apps that people can download on iOS or Android. We did the national hearing test for South Africa called Yerevan. We also launched something similar in the US with the American Academy of Audiology. And we also developed that same technology for the World Health Organization for their application called Yerevan. These are free downloads, and you can actually test your hearing with an entirely different type of test. We test your ability to hear speech in background noise, and for that application, you don't need special headsets. You can actually use any headphone and plug that into your own device and do an accurate hearing screening test.
The consumer one can be in your phone. Okay, so continuing on that sort of on that direction of questioning. One thing I love about the idea, especially the consumer side, is you make some level of healthcare accessible to the broader public. So you have a certain level of screening that anybody can basically undergo, irrespective of whether there's a medical facility nearby or not. But on the other hand, because you rely on smartphones, then at least like the minimum requirement is that that person has to have a smartphone, from what I understand. So do you have data that suggests whether you're able to provide sort of coverage to the poorest sections of society? Do they already have smartphones in these different countries of the world? Or is there still a section of society that is being left out because they don't have access to smartphones?
Yeah. That's a good question. Of course, that whole landscape is changing very rapidly, Nazareth. So the penetration rates of mobile has skyrocketed. It's pretty much saturated in places even like sub-Saharan Africa. So the mobile penetration is there. The smartphone penetration is picking up rapidly. So I can give you an example. In South Africa, more than 80% of individuals have access to a smartphone. Whether it's their own or whether it's someone in their household. So it's the vast majority, and those figures rise very rapidly. And for sub-Saharan Africa, it's very similar, maybe slightly lower in some regions. But we realize that that's the exponential growth trend that connectivity followed. Smartphones are just following in those footsteps. So at this stage, yes, we can provide the majority of people access to a free hearing test. But there are small pockets still that may not be able to for the time being.
Yeah, but it's a matter of time, more or less.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the next question, I'm trying to, with all the cases that we've profiled, we always try to examine them in our local context to see what's different and what's the same, and to also sort of maximize learning on that front. So one thing that is different in your case, not just to many social enterprises in Armenia, but to all the other startups that we've profiled, not startups, so all the other social enterprises that we've profiled in this project, is that you're very much going down the tech startup route of doing, searching for investors, doing a Series A round, and so on. While many of the social enterprises that we worked with and that we've profiled all either start up with grants or then they seek some kind of sort of regular bank financing, or it's the founder himself who puts in his money. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of going down the route that you're going down?
That's a very good question, and it's a difficult one to kind of answer. I can give you a little bit of our perspective on how to approach that. I think there are different ways to do it. Right from the start, we wanted to be a social enterprise. We had to make a decision: do we do that as a kind of non-for-profit, or do we do that as a for-profit company? And we decided on the route to do it as a for-profit company. We believe that to be sustainable in the long run, especially in our kind of area, you need to do good, but also you need to be doing well to sustain that growth and that impact, right? So and that's our kind of long-term vision and goal, is that we don't want to make a short-term impact. We have a long-term view to really kind of grow the impact, but also to see that impact sustained over the long haul. So we decided on that route. That meant that initially, we relied a lot on social impact grants that we got. We won a couple of prizes from international competitions and local competitions, which helped us get started. So we pretty much started with grant funding. But then from there realized we needed to get venture-backed investment to take this forward. And it has additional advantages apart from the fact that you're kind of on a tech startup trajectory. It builds a network of good partners and networks around the world that really open up doors for you. So our first round of funding was from a group of angel investors in Singapore, who were all a part of the healthcare infrastructure in Singapore, either on a consultancy basis or with some of the larger companies. And apart from that, they were great people and good mentors to us. They also opened doors for us and connected us into other networks, which were very helpful. Our kind of second foray into venture funding was for the seed funding round, where we had a partner in Europe who was very like-minded in their kind of vision. It's a company that we're looking at hearing healthcare, but from quite a different perspective than ours. And there was a good synergy in our technology supporting their technology. And it just made sense to kind of partner with them. So there was a bit of a commercial, strategic investment alignment there as well. So it's not just about accessing funds, it's actually about accessing smart funds, right? So that it's not just the money you're getting, but you're getting the whole network and the contacts and some of the credibility that comes along with that. And that's been the kind of the path that we've taken from there. You know, all the investors that have become part of the HearX team have brought a real strategic value to what we do. And we still believe very strongly that they need to buy into our vision and the mission that HearX has. And you know, our underlying values remain that, you know, we're a value-driven company, we're vision-led, and we certainly, you know, want to see people put first, along with our quality innovation and the trust that we want to maintain with the various stakeholders that partner with us.
So related to that, I think we talked about this a little bit when we spoke separately. How many times have you pitched to an investor before you've heard a yes? And what advice do you have to social entrepreneurs who are pitching to potential investors?
Yes, so you pitch and you pitch and you pitch. It sometimes feels like one of those little wheels the mice run on, right? It's hard work, and so we literally, you know, went around initially. My co-founder and I pitched at every event we could find, and got a little bit of money that way. But really, you know, some of the later funding, or the angel funding and the seed funding, we had to go abroad and pitch, and it really does take a lot of time and effort, and sometimes it's a ratio of 20 pitches to one successful kind of discussion, at least, where someone can connect you. So the odds are usually, you know, stacked up against you, but it does take a lot of persistence, and to keep at it and rely on, you know, the contacts that you do have. There's a lot of goodwill in the space as well, you know, so if you align with the right people, they're usually very helpful to connect you with different networks and other funders that could, you know, link you up with other opportunities again. So our kind of first angel funding round actually came from our time spent in Slush. I mean, there we had literally tens of discussions with different investors. And there was one discussion we had, and our sideline was with someone who was interested. And eventually we connected with them after Slush, and they connected us to someone else. And then that partnership kind of grew into an actual funding stream. So you never know which contact or which pitch will be successful, and sometimes it's not successful in the way you think. It may be just, you know, an email to a friend through that network. So it's in surprising ways sometimes how these funding discussions turn out.
Okay. One other way in which you're different from many social enterprises I know, and the other ones that we've profiled, are that you have a couple of co-founders, but early on you decided to hire a professional CEO who joined your team, was not originally behind the idea, sort of wasn't originally part of the founding team, let's say, but had the business know-how. And you've handed over the company's day-to-day operations to a professional CEO.
Yeah.
What are the advantages, disadvantages? I mean, is this something you would recommend more for social enterprises to do?
Yes, I think, again, you know, it depends on the specific situation. But in our case, it was very fortuitous for us to get a CEO on board. Someone who has experience in startups, small businesses, even though it wasn't in the healthcare space, but someone who understood business well and you know, growing a business and also selling, you know, the vision and the dream. So my co-founder and I are both academics, you know, so we love the vision, we love the kind of innovation, coming up with new ideas, and you often don't know what you don't know, right? As an entrepreneur. So we were fortunate enough to have a contact that connected us to the CEO, who was just exiting a previous business of his. He had a personal contact, also a link with my co-founder. And we started the discussions early on, and he bought into the dream and the vision. And it was based on his track record also that we managed to negotiate a deal with the university to license the IP. But the advantage really was that, you know, it brought business savvy that neither of us founders have. I mean, other founding members may have more business savvy, but there's a particular kind of entrepreneur business approach that startups oftentimes require, and which founders sometimes just cannot bring to the table, right? They just don't have the experience. That's not their niche. And you start to value the contributions of different team members in a team. I mean, you need all those skills, but one person doesn't have all those skills, right?
Yeah. Any other questions so far from the rest of the room? Yeah.
Hello. So I just wanted, for me, it's interesting if you could share also for others when they watch this, because we know that there is a very high failure rate when it comes to, especially like tech startups. I don't know, 90%, if I'm not mistaken, is the kind of rate of failure. So what are the success factors for you, and what made you successful so far? And I would like you to share this.
Yes, so sure. There's a lot of things that have to work together, you know. So we certainly feel that there was providence, that working with the various ingredients that came together to make this work. You know, in a different place, some different people, the same idea may not have worked. I mean, that's the reality. So you could have the most amazing idea, but if you don't have the right group of people involved and people who buy into the vision, then it can certainly fail. So I would say, you know, we certainly had a compelling vision right from the start. That's important. You want people to understand that this is a big problem and there's a very tangible solution that you're bringing to the table. And that needs to be something that you can sell really well. So that's important. I mean, to know how to position and sell the vision. That was an important part of this. Because this is in the healthcare space, you know, the healthcare space is an area where disrupting technologies sometimes have a hard time getting traction. Just because it's a conservative industry, it's difficult to actually penetrate. So one of the important ingredients for success for us there was that we did a lot of research. So we were good at developing MVPs and then testing, and actually writing up that research, validating the technology, and publishing it in international peer-reviewed scientific papers. So that really kind of builds the credibility and the validation around your technology. So that was an important part of our kind of foundational, I would say, bricks that were put in place to make sure that we had the right ingredients for success. I think we also were fortunate, as I said, to have the right mix of individuals. So we had a strong computer engineering background. We had a strong clinical background in the healthcare space where we were moving in. And then at the same time, we brought in the CEO business expertise. And I think that combination, both the technical combination, the clinical and the business expertise, really provided us with a good platform to take it to the next level. I would also say, some of the initial funding we got, if we didn't get some of the awards that gave us some initial seed money, it would have been very difficult for us to get that initial momentum and traction. So it's certainly helpful to have some initial seed money that can get you going, and so we were fortunate to actually access some of that fund. And then I think as you keep growing the business, one of the factors that were important for us was really to follow the lean startup methodology. We were very lean. We were making sure we were using our money frugally. And we moved really quickly to develop MVPs that may not have been perfect, but at least you have a product on the table that you can test, you can get feedback quickly, and we were agile in the way in which we were bringing changes. So it's important that you realize once you have an MVP, you're still in the starting blocks, right? There's so much you still have to invest and do then, that you need to have an approach and a plan in place that allows you to make those changes quickly and adapt. We were also very set on getting user feedback right from the start. So as we were rolling out MVPs, we got partners on the ground, our target audiences to test and feedback regularly to us, so that we were responsive to our customer base. And we were really kind of valuing those initial partnerships really that were giving us the feedback. So we were looking after those people. Yes, and then I think, you grow in steps. Then the next ingredient was really to connect to the right investors. And as I mentioned earlier, that means spending a lot of time on the road, spending a lot of time on your pitch decks, and making sure your message is crisp and clear, and that you spread the word as wide and as often as you can, and keep following up on any possible leads that you have. You never know when that's going to bear fruit. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of maybe in a chronological order, some of the important factors that we feel contributed to our success. Of course, as you kind of grow and you become more of a scale up, there's additional factors that then kind of start playing a role. But I would say as a startup in the early years, that was very, very important for us.
And would you say that the lean approach is something that your CEO brought to the table, or was that something you were pursuing anyway?
Yeah, I think we kind of shared that philosophy right from the start. I mean, I think as academics, you also learn to be frugal, right? You also always have a limited grant funding. So we certainly had a frugal mindset. I think, moving into the kind of startup arena introduced us to the lean methodology. And which was something also that our CEO who came on board was familiar with. So I think there was a good synergy that we were all on board with that philosophy. Okay,
so the next question I have is slightly controversial. When it comes to social enterprises, there are some issues that are sexy and some issues that are not. Healthcare sometimes, or my experience, seems to get clumped up with the not sexy issues. And within healthcare as well, hearing loss or preventing hearing loss is not among the sexiest of healthcare issues.
Yeah.
Is this a problem that you had as you were sort of trying to promote your idea, your social enterprise? And how do you counter something like this when you talk to people and they say, that's just not an interesting enough problem for us to tackle?
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, those things are barriers, right? So hearing loss has this unique barrier that people who are unaware of what hearing loss is, how common it is, how it affects people, actually have very little insight into hearing loss. So it's sometimes called an invisible epidemic. People don't see it, and they also don't realize what the impact of it is, right? So you have to overcome that barrier. So it was important for us to find effective ways to communicate the importance of hearing loss right from the start. So we always spent time to convince people, try to get them into the world of someone who has hearing loss. On the one hand, the problem is very big, the numbers are very big, but it remains abstract if you can't personalize it. So we often tried to personalize it. We used in our pitches also examples of people who suffered from hearing loss. So literally quotes. We also had good little videos that showed what a hearing loss actually means to someone. So it's really about immersing people, trying to kind of pull them into your world. Otherwise, it remains an abstract, distant problem. So we really kind of spent a lot of time on doing that. I think we were fortunate also that at the same time as we kind of started developing our technology, the World Health Organization really started to push hearing loss as an important global healthcare concern. So again, providence, the right timing, those were one of the trends that really helped us. And in 2017, the World Health Organization brought out a World Health Assembly, so where all the member states around the world agreed that hearing loss is a major concern and that action plans need to be generated. So we were also kind of riding a little bit of a trend in global healthcare where hearing loss started to come into the spotlight a little bit more. I think one of the other challenges is in established markets like high-income markets, the US, Europe. There are very established ways of delivering services, right? So if you come up with a new disruptive type of technology, it's difficult to penetrate those markets. But our technology was developed for initially for places where none of these services were available. So it actually played really well into offering a affordable, accessible solution that anyone can use in low and middle income countries where there really were no services, and which were the exact focus area of global players like the World Health Organization. So all of those trends certainly kind of helped us to break down some of the barriers.
Okay. Any other questions to you? I still have some more. So
I also.
Yeah, question from Ani.
So I was curious. I was curious to know how long did it take you from when, let's say, when it was a bit more than just an idea, like you were a bit serious about it, and until you became sustainable, not necessarily profitable, but like you were already like at least sustainable, covering your own costs.
Yes, we're still on that road, right? So we're a venture-backed company. So as money comes in, we use that to grow. So we're certainly not profitable, but we are growing the business, aggressively, because we want to see the impact spread as wide as possible. So, like I said, the initial idea came in 2013, where we started to do some initial trials. We had our first real MVP maybe 18 months later, when we started rolling it out and testing it. And that took another 18 months from the MVP being launched to us actually launching the company. So from idea to actually launching the company was what is that? 3 years? Yeah.
Yes.
So that was a long build-up, but we started the company when we already had a good MVP that was well tested, that could actually start rolling out as a product 6 months later. So I think many companies start a company and then develop the MVP. I think we were fortunate that we had this incubation kind of buffer at an academic institution, so we could do a lot of the work there and then transfer it out in a little bit more mature state into a company, and then kind of work more on the, obviously, refinement, further development, and expansion of the range of products. But we could focus on commercialization and actually getting it out into the markets.
One last question. So for me to test my hearing, I can go to the one that is accessible to consumers. And what is the name that I can download now and I can try?
Yeah. So the World Health Organization one is called Yerevan. It's one word. So Year, WHO, one word. Then you can download that on iOS or Android. And the South African one, the national hearing test for South Africa, is called Year ZA. So it's Year ZA or ZA, also one word. And you can download that and you can do a hearing test. It takes about 2 minutes. In South Africa, we've partnered with the local hearing healthcare providers. So if you do the test, you fail, you can actually connect directly with them through the application. And we've also taken that technology and built it into various different platforms. So we have kiosks, for example, where there's a self-test kiosk, and many of those get rolled out into pharmacies. So where people walk into a pharmacy, they can test their hearing. It's also available as a web widget. So companies can incorporate that into their websites as a little bit of code, and then allows people to do a test, and serves as a referral mechanism for professionals as well. So you can leave your details after the test, and the professionals can contact you to actually then make an appointment. So the technologies are built in a digital platform for us to really kind of package in different ways for different customers. We've just now worked also with a French organization who have now launched a French version of this test as a national hearing test in France.
Thank you.
Cool. Another reason why I love having you as a case for this project is the connection to the university and academia. So given your experience in academia and what you know about the University of Pretoria, is there any advice that you have to all the universities around the world as to how they can sort of, I don't know, be better at becoming a birthplace for social businesses, social enterprises in the future.
Yeah, that's a nice platform to kind of share some of our thoughts. I think one of the things universities globally get very wrong is that they believe that IP generated in universities are going to make them wealthy, right, or rich, or be a big source of income. And in reality, that very, very rarely happens. So that mindset stifles the innovation, stifles the IP that's generated in universities, so that it doesn't really translate into impact for society. So just to have a little bit of a less tight grip around IP is important. Universities should have strong commercialization officers who have experience in commercialization. I think the other thing is they need to know what their strengths are, and commercialization or actually spawning companies is not a university strength. I mean, they are there to create IP and then find quick and efficient ways to get that IP into the hands of people who have experience with commercialization. So that would be important advice. And then maybe the other thing, just to add on to that, is time is extremely important. So if in many of these tech areas, if it's not, the IP isn't so important, it's about who's first to market. So if you make that process too long, too arduous, too difficult, then you lose out on the very important advantage of having something and being first to market with it. So those are some of the general points that I'd like to make with the universities. And then, of course, the small things are around the negotiations and how to keep those as short as possible, and try to be open-handed and also have a view for social impact and not for revenue generation as the primary goal.
Okay. And as a company that's serving now more than 30 countries, what are the challenges that you faced when you initially went out of South Africa to your first market abroad and then to different countries? What challenges have you faced there, and what advice can you give to people based on that experience?
Yeah, so if you're in the medical space or the healthcare space, one of the big challenges is to make sure you have certification that allows you to offer your medical devices in specific regions. So one of the big challenges for us in our kind of healthcare space was to get approval and CE approval and FDA approval for our technologies. It's expensive for a startup to go through those certification processes. It's expensive and it takes a long time. So you have to make use of international certification bodies. It's a long process of 12 to 18 months. So you need to have sufficient funding to actually carry you over that period of time before you can actually even just put your product onto the market and start generating some revenue from that. So for a startup, that was definitely a challenge as we moved the technology out of South Africa and into other regions, is to get that certification. It was difficult both for the time, but also the costs involved. And so you have to plan around that. I think some of the other challenges was around getting the right distribution partners in countries. So there's investment of time and building relationships, making sure you align with the right partners. And that also kind of fits with your vision and the mission, and also the values, that have a shared kind of value set at least that you want to bring to the table, especially as a social enterprise. So those have been some of the challenges to kind of spread abroad. I think the other thing that we're currently kind of working very hard on is then to set up support networks on the ground. So we actually have to open offices. We actually have to have people. And in different countries where you have very little experience, those are logistical challenges that you need to plan for, and where you also need to get local advice and local expertise in to make sure you make the right decisions on the ground.
Okay. Any other questions? We have one last one. Oh, I have one last one. Check if there's anything else in the room. Okay, so you've provided lots of advice already on specific topics to entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs. But what other general advice do you have to someone who has an idea, who is passionate about solving a social problem, and and has a business idea for how to do it, but doesn't know what to do next? And what is your general advice to entrepreneurs in this area?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of advice that when you think back, that would have been great for us to have, right up front. So a couple of things that come to mind, Nazareth, is it's great to have good mentors, right? So to have people who've been through the process, who you can consult with, who you can just bounce ideas off, get some experienced people around you who are willing to share some of their time, some of their expertise. It's great to be part of an incubation hub of sorts, that can offer some of that support. There's advice that you need around IP, how to protect the IP, and those are the kind of things you need to have discussions around right up front, because you can actually, cause yourself a lot of trouble and headache along the road if you don't have those things in place initially. So that would be important. I would also say, make sure you know your strengths, but also you know your weaknesses, and that means, personally, but also as a business, where do you need expertise that you cannot bring to the table? I mean, no one person can bring everything to the table, and be very selective in how you bring in those additional pieces of expertise or persons or resources to addition your team. The first few hires are the most important hires in your startup as well, right? So I would say the first 5-6 hires are very important. They are the people who are going to kind of believe in your vision and grow that vision internally, ensure that the culture of the company is really built around that vision. So be careful in hiring the right people who don't just bring the skills, but have the passion, and really believe in what you are bringing to the table. So spend time, and don't make any hasty decisions there. So that would be some important advice. Don't give up. Keep at it. There's lots of disappointment along the road. It's not an easy road, but if you have a compelling vision and you have the right people around you, it helps you to kind of navigate through some of the difficult times when there are disappointments. And I think we did mention that earlier, in terms of getting funding, that's always one of the challenges. That, again, don't be demotivated if you're not successful after 10 pitches. I mean, that's quite common. I mean, do it 10, 20, 30, 40 times, if necessary. Somewhere you're going to, along the way, you're obviously improving your pitching, but somewhere along the way, you hit the right note, you get the right connection, and it opens up amazing doors for you. So, and that's part of the startup business, right? Is that you have to sell your idea, and you need to grow along that trajectory as well. Look after relationships, nurture your relationships with potential customers. Get feedback from users as often and as frequently as you can. Design with the users in mind. If you can, actually involve them in the design process. Again, I would say, get your MVPs out as quickly as possible, even though there's lots of mistakes, so you can test them in the field, get feedback as quickly as possible, so you can improve the product iteratively in an agile manner. Yes, so I think that those would be some of the things that kind of come to mind very quickly as important things to keep in mind as you embark on this journey. There are many others, and it keeps changing along the way. But if you build a team around a compelling vision, people buy into that vision, you can really go a long way. Ultimately, it's people who make these tech ideas work.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
That was a lot of wisdom condensed into a very brief period of time. Thank you for your time.
Sure.
If you can also get back to me in writing on that Social Innovation Academy email that I resent you about whether we can use this video of the webinar and provide it to the Social Innovation Academy, that would be great as well. The broader audience, I mean, the bigger people, the more number of people reach, the better for everyone.
Sure. Sure, be happy for you to use it. Great, thanks. It was good to connect with you guys. It sounds like you're doing good work. Keep up the good work, and look forward to kind of follow what you're doing.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. Good luck to you, and I
Thanks.
will follow up on the payment.
Okay, great. Do that, please. All the
Okay.
best. Cheers.
Bye bye.